Let me tell you something about humans that nobody in the Galactic Orientation Manual thought to mention. And trust me, that manual is 412 pages long. It covers everything. Mating rituals of the Vorkai. The proper distance to stand from a Deathworlder so you do not accidentally inhale their spore cloud. It even has a full chapter, on how to apologize to a gruntid if you step on one of their decorative fungi. Not one single paragraph about what happens when you make a human angry by hurting someone they love. Not one. I have checked, twice, after the incident. While sitting very still in my office and staring at the wall for a duration I am not going to put in any official record. I am Len, Senior Observation Officer, 3rd Rotation, Joint Species Training Base Covil 9. My job is to watch, to record, to make sure nothing at this base becomes a diplomatic incident. I have held this post for 6 cycles without a single filed complaint, not one, and I was extremely proud of that record. I kept it framed, metaphorically speaking, in a very clean and well-maintained corner of my professional identity. Then Mara Voss arrived, and that corner has never quite recovered. She came in on a standard transport with 11 other human recruits. The transport manifest had the usual warnings attached, the kind that get flagged in red at the top of the intake sheet. Deathworlders. Survivors of a planet that seemed not merely indifferent to life, but actively and creatively opposed to it. The briefing materials used phrases like extreme environmental hostility and species-level biological resilience and predator-saturated ecosystem, which are the kinds of phrases that sound very serious when you read them at a desk and sound considerably more serious when you are watching 12 of them walk off a transport ramp carrying their personal bags. Among the 12 was Mara Voss, a human Deathworlder who looked far too gentle to justify the warnings in her file, average height for her species. Dark chocolate brown hair worn down in soft, loose waves, a face that was honestly, unreasonably pretty for someone whose intake documentation included the phrase capable of sustained physical exertion under conditions fatal to most known species. High, sharp Slavic cheekbones, gray-green eyes the color of water sitting over old stone. She carried one bag. She filled out her intake forms without asking a single question. She found her bunk, sat down, and started reading a small physical paper book, which confused 3 of my colleagues enough that they filed informal queries about whether the object required documentation. We had all read the Deathworlder briefings. We had all nodded very seriously at them. We had all privately constructed a mental image of what a creature from such a planet would look and move like. Something visibly dangerous. Something that announced itself. And then Mara Voss sat on her bunk reading her paper book with quiet gray-green eyes, and she looked, genuinely, like someone's calm and pretty neighbor who tends a small garden and always remembers to water it on time. We were not worried. We should have been worried. The one who noticed her first, really noticed her in the way that mattered, was Ren. Ren was from the Servani people, a species so naturally and genuinely gentle that their homeworld had essentially no significant predators for the last 80,000 years. Ren was slender and graceful, with that soft, dusty lavender rose skin that caught light like something luminous was sitting just beneath the surface, and those large, deep violet eyes with no white surrounding them at all, just deep, absorbing violet and dark pupils that made every expression look profound even when Ren was simply deciding what to have for the evening meal. Ren had been assigned to the same training unit as Mara, and within the first week, somehow, against what I would have considered reasonable probability, the 2 of them had become friends. I say somehow because the Sorvanian humans are approximately as biologically opposite as 2 species in this galaxy can manage without being different kingdoms of life entirely. Ren processed conflict by becoming very still and waiting with extraordinary patience for it to resolve itself, the way Servani children are taught from their earliest years. Mara, I would come to understand, process conflict by walking directly into it, making steady eye contact with it, and waiting for it to make the first mistake. And yet, there they were. Every meal, same table. Every rest period, Ren attempting with genuine patience and visible good humor to teach Mara a Servani card game with 63 rules that required a level of multi-limb coordination that human anatomy was simply not designed for. Mara kept getting the sequences wrong in new and creative ways. Ren would correct her with that permanently calm, open expression. Mara would laugh, properly laugh, the kind that came from the chest and filled the space around it. And she knocked her meal tray off the table on 2 separate occasions because of it. Ren laughed too. That soft-clicking Sorvani sound like wind moving through hollow reeds. It was genuinely and without any exaggeration the nicest thing happening anywhere on this entire base. I noted it in my observation log as positive social integration between Deathworld and Servani recruit. Morale asset. I was pleased about it in an uncomplicated way. I should not have been uncomplicated about it. I should have understood what it meant, what it was underneath the laughing and the card games and the knocked over trays. I did not yet understand what human friendship actually was at its foundation, what it was made of, what it was capable of producing when the conditions required it. I would learn. Then Prox got involved. Prox was Commander Zarkan Mir's enforcer. Zarkan Mir himself was a Kalvek officer, broad-shouldered and coldly authoritative, with that pearl green skin that shifted toward deep purple in low light and eyes of dark molten gold that carried the specific temperature of someone who had never once been meaningfully challenged and had built an entire command philosophy around that fact. He ran his unit with a methodology that could be described charitably as results-focused and described accurately as an environment where cruelty had been permitted to become structural because the results were technically acceptable, and nobody above him had looked closely enough at what was producing them. He observed drills from the elevated command platform at the north end of the lower yard, present, watching, responsible for everything happening below him in every sense that the word responsible is supposed to carry. Prox was the instrument of that environment, taller than almost anyone on the base, lean and angular with warm sand-beige skin and wide-set forest green eyes with their unsettling vertical oval pupils, and a face built entirely of sharp angles and flat planes that had never, in my observation, arranged themselves into anything resembling warmth or hesitation. Prox had learned somewhere in his formation as a soldier that causing discomfort in others was a workable substitute for authority, and he had never been corrected on this point. And so he had simply continued. On the morning of the 14th day of training rotation, during a combined unit physical drill on the lower yard, Prox decided that Ren was moving too slowly through the obstacle sequence. This was true. Ren was moving slowly. The Servani skeletal structure is elegant and graceful and genuinely beautiful to observe in its natural context, but is not built for the kind of rapid, high-impact movement this particular drill demanded. Ren had flagged this clearly and specifically in their intake assessment. The base medical team had reviewed it, confirmed it, and filed a formal written accommodation on record specifying exactly which drill types required modification for Servani participants. The accommodation existed. It was in the system. It was doing precisely what a filed accommodation is supposed to do, which is prevent exactly what was about to happen. Prox crossed the yard toward Ren with the unhurried stride of someone who had decided something and was not reconsidering it. He grabbed Ren's arm. He pulled, hard, with the full leverage force of 6 feet 7 inches of angular mass that had spent years being permitted to use itself however it chose without meaningful consequence. The crack was not small. It rang across the training yard with a sharp flat sound that had no business being as loud as it was. Several recruits visibly flinched. One took an involuntary step backward. Ren collapsed immediately, going down hard on one knee on the packed dirt, clutching the arm against their chest with their remaining hand, the lavender rose skin of their face going several shades paler in the span of a single breath. Ren made one sound, short, involuntary, the kind of sound that escapes before a person can stop it. I was watching from the upper observation deck. I saw every second of it. I started moving toward my communication panel to call the medical unit immediately. And then I looked at Mara. She had been 3 positions behind Ren in the drill line. She had seen everything. From the moment Prox started walking toward Ren to the moment Ren hit the ground. She was standing completely still now. And I need you to understand the precise quality of that stillness, because it is the most important thing in this entire account. Frozen is what happens when shock hits a body and stops it involuntarily. That was not what Mara was doing. What Mara was doing was the stillness of a door that is closed but has not been locked. The stillness of a breath held on purpose, deliberately, because the person holding it has already made a decision and is simply waiting. Everything behind those gray-green eyes was moving at considerable speed. Not one single muscle in her face was showing any of it. Her expression was, to any observer who did not know what they were looking at, completely neutral. I have observed 43 species across my career in high-stress and active conflict situations. I have never, before that morning, been genuinely frightened by a face that was doing absolutely nothing visible. I was frightened then. Something old and accurate in the back of my mind looked at Mara Voss standing perfectly still in that drill line and sent up a signal I did not yet have the full context to read correctly. Prox said something to Ren on the ground. I could not hear it from my position. His posture said everything that needed to be said about what it was. Mara's gaze followed Prox for only a moment as he turned to walk back to his position. Then it shifted, slowly, deliberately, up to the elevated command platform at the north end of the yard, where Commander Zarkanmir stood observing the drill, with his hands clasped behind his back and his dark gold eyes moving across the yard with the practiced survey of a commanding officer who had seen this kind of thing before and had made his peace with it, continuing. Mara looked at him for a long, steady moment. Then she looked back at the drill line. She finished the drill, perfect form, every obstacle, every sequence, without a word, without any visible emotion. The Deathworlder stood in that line and completed every requirement with a precision that, in the context of what I had just watched her watch, was the most controlled and deliberate thing I had ever seen a living creature do. After the drill, I went down to the yard. Medical had been called for Ren by another officer who had witnessed the fall. I found Mara crouched beside Ren while they waited, not touching the injured arm, just present and close and speaking quietly. Ren's trembling fingers gradually settled. The pain was visible in every line of Ren's posture, but the trembling stopped. I approached. I told myself it was professional monitoring. "Voss," I said, "are you all right?" She looked up at me. Those gray-green eyes, steady and absolutely clear. "Ren's arm is fractured in 2 places," she said. The base had a filed accommodation for exactly this drill load, and it was ignored. A pause that had a specific weight to it. "I am fine." She said it the way a person sets down an object they are finished with for now, but have not put away. I said something about the incident being reviewed. She nodded once, with the patience of someone who understands the difference between words and outcomes and is simply filing the interaction away accurately. Then she looked back at Ren. That night, I wrote in my observation log that the situation was being monitored and no further escalation was anticipated. I wrote it with genuine confidence. I was wrong in a way that has since become a significant part of my ongoing professional education. The base settled into its nighttime routines. Commander Zarkanmir's officer quarters on the north side of the compound had lights until approximately the 22nd hour and then went dark. The base slept. At some point between the 22nd hour and the 5th hour of the following morning, Mara Voss left her bunk. The overnight system logged her exit. She signed out using a routine personal time notation. Nobody flagged it. People took night walks. The system was designed to correlate a routine notation with a fractured arm and a very specific shift in gaze direction observed on a training yard the previous morning. In hindsight, someone should have made that correlation. I am that someone. I will note for the record that every base security system was fully functional throughout that night. Every door logged, every corridor recorded. Mara did not disable a single system or obscure a single camera. She walked through the base with the calm, unhurried stride of someone who had somewhere specific to be and had already decided everything that needed deciding, because she had. Zarkon Hearn's aide arrived at his quarters at the 5th hour and 20 minutes with the morning briefing documents. Knocked twice, no response. Used secondary access, opened the door. What he found, I am not going to describe in clinical detail. I will tell you what was essential. Commander Zarkanmir was alive. He was sitting against the far wall of his quarters, conscious, looking directly at the door when it opened. His expression was one I have spent considerable time finding the right words for, and the most accurate I have arrived at is this. He looked like a being who had learned something fundamental and permanent about the nature of the universe during the night, something he had not previously understood, and had not been given the option to decline learning, and who would have strongly and specifically preferred to remain in his previous state of not knowing it. His right arm was gone, not injured, not broken in place. Gone, removed entirely. The medical team described the work in their official report with the phrase, and I am quoting with complete accuracy, a level of anatomical precision suggesting either advanced surgical training or a species-level biological advantage in fine motor control under significant pressure. Very little blood relative to expectation. The wound had been cauterized. Mara's field kit contained a small tool human soldiers carry for equipment repairs. It also, under certain circumstances, served other purposes. Zarkanmir could not identify his assailant. He said this multiple times across multiple sessions with the same unwavering consistency of a being who has made a firm decision and intends to hold it permanently, because saying the name out loud seemed to produce in him a fear that the actual loss of his arm had apparently not. Mara Voss walked back into barracks at the 5th hour and 41 minutes. I was in the corridor by then, called in as part of the general response. I was standing there when the barracks door opened. Mara stepped inside carrying something in one hand, held at her side with the casual, purposeful grip of someone transporting an item to its intended destination. Several recruits who were awake by then stared. One dropped a cup. The cup hit the floor and nobody looked at it. Nobody spoke. The corridor had the quality of a held breath that an entire building was sharing simultaneously. She was wearing her standard training clothes. They were clean. That detail has never left me. The deliberate cleanness of everything. What it implied about the level of attention and intention that had been operating throughout the entire night. She was carrying Zarkan Mir's arm. She saw me. She stopped. She looked at the arm. She looked at me. For the record, she said, in the conversational tone of someone reporting the completion of a task they had planned carefully, I did offer him a choice first. Then she held the arm toward me. I took it. I still cannot fully account for why my hands moved before my brain had formed a coherent response. I stood in that corridor of barracks, holding a Calvec commander's severed arm, while Mara Voss nodded at me with the mild and pleasant expression of someone who has finished what they came to do. And then she walked to the mess hall and had scrambled eggs with dried herbs from a small container she kept in her left chest pocket. She ate with a clean and unhurried appetite. I know this because multiple personnel reported it to me within the hour, with the specific energy of people who needed someone else to know. The tribunal convened within 48 hours, 7 senior officers, 5 species, full formal configuration, every observer chair filled, personnel standing along the walls and out into the corridor, because this incident had not failed to attract attention from every corner of the installation. Mara sat in the single subject chair, straight back, hands folded in her lap, watching the council with the focused, attentive expression of someone fully prepared for the meeting and simply waiting for it to begin. Counselor Voss, lead adjudicator, 700 years of service, 34 prior tribunals, not known in any documented record for being rattled by anything, looked at Mara for a long moment before speaking. Recruit Voss, you have been made aware of the charges. Yes, Mara said. Do you understand the severity? Yes. And how do you wish to respond? Mara unfolded her hands and placed them flat on her knees. Ren's arm was fractured in 2 places, she said, because Prox ignored a filed medical accommodation and used physical force during a supervised drill. I reported the incident through proper channels at 1700 hours the same day. I was told it would be reviewed. It was not reviewed. The pause that followed was precisely the length needed for a fact to settle completely into a room. So I handled it. The room was quiet in the way rooms are quiet when a very large number of beings are all making the same simultaneous choice not to make a sound. Voss said carefully, you removed a superior officer's arm. Commander Zarkan Mir was Prox's commanding officer, Mara said. Prox acted within Zarkan Mir's unit culture. Zarkan Mir built and maintained that culture. He was present on the command platform when Ren's arm was broken and he did nothing. She held Voss's gaze without difficulty. I addressed the source. A brief pause. I did leave him the other one. The sound from the observer section was something between a laugh grabbed hard by its collar and a gasp that had lost its balance entirely. Possibly both at once. Voss pressed all 4 hands together. Recruit Voss. You understand that what you are describing is premeditated? Yes, Mara said. That does not concern you. She considered this with genuine visible attention, running the question through some internal process without hurrying it. Ren is my friend, she said. Ren was hurt. The system that existed to protect Ren did not protect Ren. I am not particularly concerned about the method. Those gray-green eyes steady on the council. I am somewhat concerned that the method is receiving considerably more institutional attention than the original injury to a soldier with a filed accommodation on record. I would like that noted. Voss stared at her for 11 seconds. I counted. The council recessed for 4 hours. When they returned, Voss had the expression of a being who had spent 4 hours in a room where nobody had a fully satisfying answer and had arrived at a position that was simply going to have to be enough. Mara was formally reprimanded, formally restricted to base for 30 standard days, formally noted in her service record under a category the tribunal clerk created from scratch in real time as a soldier demonstrating exceptional commitment to unit welfare through non-standard resolution methods. Prox was dishonorably discharged, effective immediately. Zarkan Mir was medically retired. The filed accommodation system was reviewed base-wide within the week. I visited Ren in the medical unit on the 3rd day. The bone-knitting sleeve was white and clean against lavender rose skin, and Ren was sitting up attempting the card game solo with one functional hand, which was going approximately as well as mathematics suggested it would. I sat down and told Ren everything, all of it. The whole account in approximately 90 seconds. Ren went completely still, full Sorvani stillness, the kind that makes a person look like a very beautiful and precise sculpture of themselves. Then slowly Ren's fingers pressed flat against the blanket. She did that, Ren said. Not a question. A thing being placed carefully into understanding and held there. Yes, for me, yes. The stillness held several more seconds. Then quietly Ren made the sound, the hollow reed sound, The soft clicking Sorvani laugh, slower than I had heard it before, softer, and carrying something inside it I had never heard in a Sorvani laugh, which was weight. The specific weight that accumulates when something means more than available words were built to carry. I need to teach her the ending of the card game, Ren said. She has never reached the ending. It is very satisfying. She will like it. I looked at Ren. That is your response to all of this. What other response should there be, Borer? Concern. The arm, Ren. She brought back the arm. Ren's large violet eyes moved to me with the permanent calm that was simply a Sorvani face being what it was. She brought it back, Ren said, because she wanted no confusion about what she had done, about why. She was not ashamed. She was not hiding. A pause. She wanted every person on this base to understand that if someone hurts me, there is a person who will walk through the dark to find the one responsible and come back in the morning carrying proof of what she is willing to do. Ren looked down at the card pieces on the blanket. I have known Mara for 14 days. I have never in my life felt that safe. I did not say anything for a while. Outside the window, the training yard was running its morning sequence, boots on packed ground. The completely ordinary sounds of a base going about its day as if the ground had not recently shifted somewhat permanently beneath it. The base implemented a new standing order, formally titled General Order 44 Koval, informally titled by everyone here, and eventually by personnel at 6 neighboring installations who heard and adopted it out of what I can only describe as informed self-interest, the Voss rule. Immediate medical review and command-level response required for any injuries sustained during supervised drilling where a filed accommodation existed on record, 2-hour response window, mandatory documentation, 0 discretion allowance. The Voss rule has not been violated once since the day it was filed. I believe this is partly because it is a well-constructed rule. I believe it is mostly because everyone here knows what happened the last time a system failed to protect someone that Mara Voss, Deathworld soldier, considered a friend. Nobody has shown any interest in finding out what happens the second time. I want to say something clearly because I think it matters, and because it gets lost when this story travels, which it has. Mara Voss is not a creature of violence. She did not arrive at Koval 9 looking for a reason. She arrived with a paper book and dried herbs and a genuine willingness to learn a 63-rule card game. She made one friend. She asked, in the most fundamental way a person can ask, that her friend not be hurt. That is the whole story at its base. What the galaxy did not have in 412 pages of orientation material is this. Humans evolved on a world that spent millions of years actively trying to remove them from it. The only thing that kept any individual human alive long enough to matter was the group, the people beside them, the ones they fed and who they kept watch over through the dark and who watched over them in return. That bond is not cultural. It is not philosophical. It is written into the oldest and deepest layer of what they are. And it does not negotiate, and it does not get tired, and it does not check whether the action it is producing is proportionate to the offense. It asks one question, just the one. Is someone I love in danger? If the answer is yes, then everything else steps quietly to one side. I updated the Galactic Orientation Manual, Chapter 14, 1 paragraph. It reads as follows. If a human considers you their friend, there is no known force in this galaxy sufficient to protect you from what they are prepared to do on your behalf. The correct response to this information is not fear, it is gratitude. Be their friend in return, mean it fully, and under absolutely no circumstances cause harm to anyone they love. Ren and Mara finished the card game on the evening of the 22nd day. Mara won. Ren had not anticipated this. Mara had been quietly counting something for 11 days. The hollow reed laugh filled the medical room, and then the corridor outside it, and I heard it from my office 2 floors above, soft and clicking and carrying that weight inside it that I now knew how to recognize. I sat back in my chair. I opened my observation log. I wrote, no incidents today, no anticipated escalations. This time I was right.